So, yes, I did see Oppenheimer, and anytime my content creation LLC purchases a movie ticket to see a movie, I have to do a review of that movie. So, I'm going to give my thoughts on Oppenheimer. But before I do, please do me a favor from this side of the camera. Please smash that like button, and also please consider subscribing to the channel. After all, why would you click on a video and not like the video and subscribe to the channel? So please consider both of those. Those help out with the engagement, and those would help me out a lot personally. Okay, now let's talk about Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. So I'm going to cheat a little bit before I jump into Oppenheimer. I'm going to give Cillian Murphy his roses, as they say, while he's still here. And as I'll describe later on in this video, Cillian Murphy seems to be part of Christopher Nolan's crew of regular actors that he uses. And I haven't followed every Cillian Murphy movie, but ever since he played Dr. Jonathan Crane / the Scarecrow in Batman Begins, I've been a Cillian Murphy fan. There's something about the way that Cillian Murphy played Dr. Jonathan Crane and the Scarecrow in Batman Begins that, in my opinion, made that all work and helped capture the essence of Batman, or the Batman, and his many villains, because Batman's villains typically were not super powered like Superman's villains, but they were usually smart or deranged in some kind of way. And Cillian Murphy captured, or he portrayed, an intelligence, an iciness, and a level of calculation that Dr. Jonathan Crane had to use to maneuver Gotham City, and to also work with Carmine Falcone on one side, and then also Ra's al Ghul on the other side. And I think Cillian Murphy in that role, he just nailed it. I'm thinking about the interaction with Carmine Falcone when he tells Carmine Falcone that all the favors have to stop, and Carmine Falcone starts pontificating about how he runs Gotham, and Jonathan Crane keeps that icy expression and says, "I'm more than aware that you don't fear me, Mr. Falcone." And then there was the scene where after Batman apprehends Carmine Falcone, they're in Arkham Asylum, and Carmine Falcone starts making demands, and once again, Dr. Jonathan Crane, Cillian Murphy, has that icy look, and the camera zooms in on him, and all of a sudden he pulls out the mask and says, "Would you like to see my mask?" He puts the mask on and he sprays Carmine Falcone with the fear gas. It was awesome. But my favorite scene probably was the scene where Bruce / Batman goes to rescue Rachel from Dr. Crane and his goons, and they get into that struggle, and Batman apprehends Dr. Crane / the Scarecrow, and he gives him his own nerve gas. "Here's a taste of your own medicine, doctor." And Dr. Crane starts to feel the terror, and then Batman questions him and says, "Crane, who are you working for?" And then Crane, from the gas, he starts hallucinating, and all of a sudden Batman turns into this demon, and his voice goes, "Crane, who are you working for?" And he's menacing and he's drooling, and Dr. Crane is like, "Ra's al Ghul." Anyway, I just want to say that. I just want to say Cillian Murphy, since that point, was one of my Cillian Murphy has been one of my favorite actors. So let me now jump into my brief synopsis, hopefully brief, of Oppenheimer. So I'm going to start my discussion of my synopsis of Oppenheimer by saying that I first really learned and registered in my mind who Robert Oppenheimer was from the author, podcaster, and speaker Malcolm Gladwell through his great work, Outliers. And in a specific passage of Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell talks about Robert Oppenheimer and Chris Langan and how social class impacts or how it can impact a person's personal trajectory. And it turns out Robert Oppenheimer attempted to murder his tutor, and the character actually mentions that in the opening act, well, the first act of the movie. So that's my first exposure to Robert Oppenheimer. So in terms of the movie, I'm just going to go ahead and piggyback off what Chris Gore from Film Thread said. He did a podcast with Alan and another gentleman whose name I can't think of from Comic-Con. And Chris Gore basically said, and I'd like to meet Chris and Alan one day. Chris Gore basically said, number one, the movie was long. Number one, it was about 3 hours. And yeah, I thought that when I went in to see the movie, I was going to be able to go to the cigar lounge afterwards. And of course I could have, but I didn't want to stay out too late. And I saw the 7:00 show, and I actually missed the beginning, but I saw the 7:00 show. And then throughout the movie, I was looking at my watch and I was like, wow, when is this going to be over? Or how much longer do we have to go? And so, yeah, it was a long movie. And Chris pointed out that the first act, well, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. Well, a somewhat spoiler, but he pointed out that the first act was about Robert Oppenheimer's background and personal life. The second act was about the Los Alamos assembling the science team, the military/science team, and then building the bomb and testing the bomb and then shipping it off to Japan. And then the third act was about the hearings regarding whether or not he was a communist. So Chris was of the opinion that the first and the third act could have been shortened to make a shorter movie. But we know that Christopher Nolan's movies typically are longer, and Christopher Nolan's movies are typically packed with information. And in those first two acts, those were in those instances, you really had to listen to see what was going on and to catch all the details for the latter stages of the movie. But what I really liked about the movie, particularly in the first act, and aside from the portrayal of a scientist, because I am a scientist myself. By the way, I have a science and technology channel. It's called Big Discussions 76 Science and Technology. Please consider subscribing if you like science. But what I really liked, in addition to that aspect of it, because Robert Oppenheimer was a theoretical physicist, was that they showed his human side. And I really like when real life personalities/characters are portrayed. I really like when we're given a three-dimensional depiction of who they were. So it turns out, and Chris pointed this out, that he was a bit of a philanderer, and he had an affair with a suspected communist in the beginning, and then that affair kind of went into his marriage. So he wasn't a perfect guy. He was a smart guy, and he made decisions, and he was the leader of a project that arguably impacted the future of the world as we know it, and it may still be impacting the future of our world. But he was human as well, and he had flaws and he had weaknesses. So I thought that was powerful. The testing of the bomb, that was significant. That was portrayed in a very, very stellar way. I'm thinking about the explosion, seeing the explosion, and then that scene where the sound hit us. I saw that in I think it's called an RPX theater. So we experienced that. We saw the explosion, and then we felt that thunder and lightning, that thunder sound when the sound waves came from the explosion. And I thought that they really, Christopher Nolan and Cillian Murphy, they really, really captured what he was thinking and how conflicted he was in helping build those two bombs, and just contemplating the terror and the long lasting damage that he created, or that he helped give rise to in Japan due to the building of the weapon. And so I thought they did a good job capturing his inner self-reflection and his pondering of the horrors that he helped create. The last act of the movie, involving Lewis Strauss, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, that involved investigating Robert Oppenheimer's connections to communism. That was a big deal in that era, as as World War II was ending, and as the Cold War was starting to ramp up, and as it was in its early stages. That part, again, you had to really listen to the details. You had to think about the details from the beginning of the movie, and you really had to think about what his connections were, and what his connections were to whom, and what he said to whom, and that part, having exposure, I'll just say that, to the public sector, and knowing that there are hearings, and there are uh, Senate hearings and House hearings, and trials of all kinds, and advisory panels of all kinds. That part of the movie really hit home with me, because I've been a part of those, and I've sat in on those, and it really makes you wonder what people's motivations are, and why they do some of the things they do, and what their personal agendas are. And I thought that was a powerful part of the movie, even though Chris Core thought it could have gone a little shorter, as having had exposure to the public sector and those things, those machinations that stood out to me. And it seems as though, having had exposure to the public sector, power and influence and attaining high ranking positions, that's a real thing. That's a real thing in the public sector. So those are my thoughts on the movie. I would recommend going to see it, and I probably need to go back and see it again, because, as I described, I got to the theater late. I thought I bought the ticket for the 8 o'clock show. No, I thought I bought the ticket for the 7 o'clock. I thought I bought a ticket for the 7 o'clock show, but I bought a ticket for the 8 o'clock show, and I went into the theater and there was nobody in there, and I realized, wait a minute, I bought a ticket for the wrong show. So the Regal Kingstown staff, they were able to get me into the 7 o'clock show. So I got in there late, and we had the recliner seats, and all that was left were the seats up front. So I was looking at the movie like this the entire time. So I probably have to go back and watch it again from a seat that's a little further back, so I can see everything again and see everything in its entirety. So that's my synopsis of Oppenheimer. Now, as Chris and other content creators have pointed out, it was a star-studded cast, and it was a full cast. I gave Cillian Murphy his roses at the beginning of this video, but other notable names in there were Robert Downey Jr., who played Lewis Strauss. Emily Blunt was in there. Rami Malek, of course, Matt Damon. I just saw a tweet from the Critical Drinker this morning that, Josh Hartnett was in there. Gary Oldman was in there. And yeah, it was a full cast. It was a star-studded cast. And as with most Christopher Nolan movies, I was thinking, it seems like Christopher Nolan has a crew. He has a crew of regular actors that he uses in a good number of his movies. So he brings in stars, but he also has a crew of regulars. And I'm looking at this guy here, David Dast Melchin. David Dast Melchin. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but he was one of the Joker's goons in The Dark Knight, the one with schizophrenia, who Harvey Dent was about to play Russian roulette with. Gary Oldman has been in several of his movies, I believe. And there was Kenneth Branagh. He was the antagonist in Tenet, and it seems as though there's a regular lineup of characters. I'm sorry, of actors and actresses that Christopher Nolan likes to use in his movie. So it was a full cast, and it was a stellar cast, and I thought they all played their roles very, very well. Robert Downey Jr.'s character ended up being a bit of a villain in a way, as I just described. In the public sector, there's a lot of movement and positioning for power, and it seemed to me that Lewis Strauss was trying to disparage Robert Oppenheimer and move him out of his position so he could ascend to that position. And then I'll just say that going back to Robert Oppenheimer's character portrayed by Cillian Murphy, juxtaposing the Dr. Jonathan Crane Scarecrow character versus the Robert Oppenheimer character, the Oppenheimer character was very serious. And of course, he was building a bomb to end a war. But you could see that it was a very, very serious role this time. And Cillian Murphy played it with a bit of, there was a darkness and a somberness to his portrayal of Robert Oppenheimer. So all in all, I thought the entire cast did a good job with this movie. So that's all I've got. Those are my thoughts on Oppenheimer. I may go see it again because I missed the opening, and I was sitting up in front, in the very front row, looking at the screen like this. A funny story, that night I saw it, that was Barbie night. Barbie has been making its rounds in the news cycle now as well, and it was Barbie night. So as I was walking in the theater, I saw a sea of pink. Some sites a little nicer than others, but it was Barbie night. I wasn't going to see Barbie. I'm not going to go see Barbie, but it was Barbie night as well. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know what you think about Oppenheimer if you saw it, and let me know if you're going to see it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. This is Big Discussion 76 Entertainment and Media. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. If you're new to the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to donate something to the channel, that information is below in the description box. Also, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I'm also a writer with 2 blogs and a book project on the way, which I will be discussing to some degree here on this channel. And with that, everyone, I'm going to end this. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.